Hi everyone and welcome. In today's recording, I'm going to be speaking about this upcoming Mercury retrograde season, the second of this year, taking place in the sign of Libra. Now, first of all, this is really interesting because the first Mercury retrograde took place in the sign of Gemini. Now, this second one takes place in the sign of Libra, and we're going to have yet another one, but next year in the sign of Aquarius. So this is where Mercury truly emphasizes on air signs. And the big picture of this astrological energy, it is almost like a defragmentation where the computer's hard disk from time to time has to be defragmented in order for it to function optimally. And all of the three air signs have a lot to do with our mind, our way of thinking, our thought processes, our information, the way we share, the way we communicate, etc., etc. So basically, we had a very powerful change from an astrological perspective, of course. This 21st of December 2020, the great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter at 0 degrees of the sign of Aquarius. So that ultimately opened up a new cycle, a new era for all of us. And Mercury, the planet of the mind, that astrological power which basically helps us process reality and everything that has to do with it, is reconfiguring our minds, the intellectual sphere, the element of air, to reflect the upgrade, if you will, that resulted from the great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter. Now, the first Mercury retrograde that took place in the sign of Gemini, Mercury's daytime expression, its home sign basically, and it was in the month of June, the very end of May and the first half of June basically. And that Mercury retrograde was all about ourselves, our way of thinking, our own authenticity. It was like a really powerful inner call to look in the mirror and see ourselves for who we truly are, without as much of the conditioning that we have been subjected to all of our lives. Education, for example, the upbringing, everything that we borrowed from other people, from society. Of course, everything that we learned, our own adaptations throughout life. Now, of course, all of those are necessary. We cannot function as human beings without those, yet still, those condition us. And because we also had a very powerful solar eclipse, also in June in the sign of Gemini, it was like a recall for us to remember who we are at the very core of our being, not so much without the conditioning, but rather that which makes us truly authentic. So that Mercury retrograde season in June kind of sent all of us one way or another back to the drawing board, and it showed us how our way of thinking, our mindset, the lower mind, that which we give our mental focus to each and every day, each second of our lives. Because on one hand, that creates our reality, our experiences, our perception. And on the other hand, Gemini is the sign of the twins, so the other, that also influences one way or another our closest relationships. Those people who are an active part of our lives. Now, this Mercury retrograde season in the sign of Libra, it is much more about other people, our relationships, which have to do with basically the 7th house, our partners, regardless in which sense, romantic partners, partners who we share our lives with, everyone which has to do with our contractual relationships, work, or any kind of contract, any kind of alliance, any kind of agreement. This is where the other must not even be a human being, for example. It can be an institution like a bank, a company. It can also reflect how our choices, our decisions, our preferences, everything that we, well, ultimately love, because Libra is ruled by Venus, so it has a lot to do with the heart as well. So what we love and who and what we give our love to, because a contract is an agreement and it should reflect our preferences, and preferences from a very psychological perspective are based on emotion and everything that we love. So how all of that influences our everyday lives, it influences our reality ultimately. Now, this Mercury retrograde season is ultimately going to have a greater effect in that area of your life where Libra falls into your own personal chart. And needless to say that natives born under the sign of Libra, but also all of the air signs, are going to feel this very strongly. Now, first of all, I would just like to say a couple of general things about every Mercury retrograde season basically. Mercury is the planet of the mind. It is the planet which ensures the flow of information, sometimes even emotion, communication, electricity, travel, synchronicity, interhuman connections. So basically at every Mercury retrograde season we have to go back to the drawing board, we have to reanalyze, we have to rethink, redo, replan. Very many times it is also a reality check moment when we have to align our designs, our plans, our personal modus operandi with basically reality. This is a moment when one way or another we have to accept life's terms and conditions and adapt ourselves to it. Another thing that almost every Mercury retrograde season has in common, well, that is the moment when miscommunication may take place. That is the moment when certain documents, emails, or anything which has to do with any kind of communication might suffer blockages, delays, might slow down considerably. There might be certain errors, miscalculations. It might have to be returned more than once. That is also a period when we have to travel, or we make travel arrangements, travel plans. Maybe we booked something, well, it won't go according to our plans, our expectation. There might be delays, there might be blockages, there might be change of dates. But of course, sometimes we might not have even booked a travel or planned to travel, and something just arises like an emergency, and it kind of forces us to go here and there and solve certain problems. And another thing which is very specific to Mercury retrograde seasons, our equipment, our electronics, especially phones, laptops, everything that we use to communicate, to share information with, might break down. They might really act up or have unusual manifestations, if this makes sense. But of course, this can be any electronic device. It can also be cars. It can also be software. And very many times it can also be our brain. So we must be aware that this might be a big theme at this time. And like always, another element of a Mercury retrograde season, the shadowy one basically, especially right now in the sign of Libra. Well, Mercury's darker expression, if this makes sense, has to do with thieves, because we can also look at Mercury as basically Loki, the deceiver, the scammer. And you know, when people usually have this tendency not to pay close attention to every single little detail, that is like a gate opening for scammers, for thieves, for deceivers. So be very careful what you do on the internet, what links you click, who you give your money to. And Libra is all about legislation and contracts and legal agreements. So before agreeing or signing anything, read the fine print, read up, ask a consultant if you're not sure. So don't make any legal commitments that you're not very sure. Of course, if you have read up, if you know what you're signing, it's no problem at all. But just don't be blind to these things, especially in this period, all of the autumn basically. And like always, be careful with emails, text messages, everything that seems very, very suspicious to you. Well, chances are it is suspicious. So, pay very, very close attention, because you don't want to be a victim of those people who are kind of empowered by the darker aspects of a Mercury retrograde season. And also with the sign of Libra, this also sets the stage for impersonations. So those of you who are public figures or who share something publicly, who have, I don't know, a channel or anything, you offer a service, be very careful, because there might be impersonators wanting to scam people using your identity. So be very aware of all of these. Now next, I would like to speak about the specifics of Mercury retrograde in the sign of Libra. As I said, this is going to be a celestial invitation to examine our relationships that are existent in our lives, generally speaking. Even if Libra doesn't fall specifically to your 7th house, well, because this is basically the collective energy, you're still going to see this and feel this, and this will still play out one way or another in your life. And naturally, on the world stage, collectively speaking, this will be a very, very huge theme. Not just because of the Mercury retrograde, but because other things are going on in the sign of Libra, and I'll speak about this as we go along. But at the same time, this can also be a psychological and emotional energy as well. What do you feel about other people? How do you feel about the contracts, the relationships, the agreements that exist in your life? Have your feelings changed? Have the feelings of those other people changed? How much power do other people have over you? How much power do you have over other people? Is this in balance? Is this serving you? Is it serving the greater good? And also, what do you truly love? And how does that love, how does your desires basically affect your decision-making process, your choices, your preferences? What do you project onto other people, and what do other people project on you? And at the same time, there is also a karmic influence here, karmic relationship, karmic agreements. Even if they have like a down-to-earth legal element to them, like a job contract or any other form, like a debt, like a loan. Or, of course, the most simplest example, marriage. All of these might go back to the drawing board, where you truly analyze them and you will try to find a new balance. Some of them will be terminated, of course, because one of the Mercury retrograde's predominant aspects is a square to Pluto, so which means termination in the sense of cord cutting, but it can also mean transformation, readaptation, evolution. There is also a fated element here, Pluto, and something which has to do with power, your power or the power of other people. But fortunately, there is also a lucky, optimistic, favorable, or simply said, a blessing here as well. Because one of the other predominant conversations that Mercury retrograde is going to hold and then retake is a trine with Jupiter from fellow air sign Aquarius. So that leads to somewhere positive, whatever takes place during this Mercury retrograde season, regardless how an agreement or a relationship or the way you feel about other people in your lives, regardless how that changes, well, ultimately it will lead to a blessing. It will lead not just to your own personal well-being, but also to a greater good. Now, of course, on the world stage, This is very, very different because the main aspect is a T-square that Mercury and Eris hold with Pluto, so that means that Mercury is in opposition to Eris. This means an abuse of power, basically, but from a legal perspective, maybe inequality, discrimination, but people are not going to take this lightly. There is going to be a legal battle or even a massive opposition, basically, that people will say, we cannot tolerate this and we're willing to fight for this. And this being equality, justice, fairness, everything which has to do with the higher expression of the sign of Libra. So that means that legislation will suffer changes, and then it will be heavily contested, and then it will have to be changed again. Chances are at the very, very end of the autumn, when Mercury is already going direct, going over its shadow path. But, generally speaking, it will be a lot of chaos, it will be political battle, it will be even political backstabbing, social unrest. Even on the world stage, international alliances will change, they will have to be modified, they will go back and forth. So these are definitely going to be very, very turbulent times, especially that Mercury goes retrograde on a part of the sky which astrologers call via combusta, so the path of fire, of combustion. And that kind of means either a struggle or a heated rearrangement within alliances and partnerships. And from an international point of view, on the world stage, well, this is very clear what it's gonna mean. But fortunately, there are saving graces here which promise a much more optimistic future, which promises that regardless of what chaos, turmoil, conflict, rebellion, even political war, psychological war goes on during this Mercury retrograde season, there is still a promise of a greater well-being, and this is suggested by the trine with Jupiter, and later on a trine with Saturn. And Mercury is also going to hold these conversations when the retrograde finishes and it goes direct again on the same path it took. But this is where also Saturn and Jupiter are going to be direct at that moment. So that means evolution, progress, things are going to be done, solutions are going to be born, and it has to serve ultimately the greater good, because Jupiter and Saturn are in Aquarius, so society, humanitarianism, no one's left behind, equality and equity for everyone, etc. Now, after we examine the general overview of this Mercury retrograde season, in the following, let's take a look at very important dates. These dates can be quite important and influential from a very personal and individual perspective, because, as I said, one of the main topics of this Mercury retrograde season is making decisions, making choices, rearranging our agreements, partnerships, contracts, how we feel and think about other people, how other people influence our lives. And naturally, with contracts, this can also influence business, it can also influence a company, especially if you work with projects, if you work with other people, if you have clients, if you're a public person, if you share anything publicly, or of course if you have any kind of legal issues or waiting on documents, have any kind of relationship with authorities, these dates might be really important for you. So first of all, this Mercury retrograde season officially starts on the 28th of September, but Mercury at the moment of this recording, so the 22nd of December, Mercury is already very, very slow, it's barely moving, so its symbolism is getting way more amplified, and its amplification is gonna be at its peak on the 26th of September, when it will stop and be stationary. So by this time, all of us are gonna kind of feel either very directly by observing events in our lives, or maybe some people more intuitively or out of sheer instinct. The opposite sign of Libra is Aries, that is powerful gut feeling basically. So we are kind of getting the picture of what the main theme in this Mercury retrograde season is going to be for us personally. And as it stops in the sky, it will mark the most important celestial conversations, as I said. A square that it holds with Pluto, and a trine it holds with Jupiter. The square with Pluto represents that one way or another our relationship has to undergo a transformation. Of course, for some people this can be personal relationships, it can mean their marriage, their partnerships. For other people it's much more about, as I said, their contracts, either with institutions, banks, a company, work. For other people it simply means their alliances with other people. And chances are that at a certain moment in this Mercury retrograde season, you will have to make a choice, you will have to make a decision, or retrograde, go back to a choice or a decision you already made this year. Maybe in June, when you might have done a lot of soul searching, when you went back to the drawing board of what your authentic self and self-expression is. Maybe right now, during this Mercury retrograde season, you will want to express that, reflect that, make that real. Implement your authenticity in everything that you do. And your relationships are definitely one of the big key factors here. And the sun at this time is also going to be in the sign of Libra. So expressing yourself, projecting your authenticity on everyone and everything around you. Then there is that trine to Jupiter. Well, ultimately your big goal, the big purpose, the big picture, if this makes sense, is for you to have the future you would like to experience, and other people, all your relationships are an active part of this, regardless in which sense. You will want your relationships, regardless again in which sense, contracts, very down-to-earth sense, karmic sense, or just emotionally, just friendships and one-on-one alliances. Anyway, you will want those to reflect your worldview, your own belief system, your life philosophies, everything which has to do with the symbolism of Jupiter, and at the same time equality and fairness and mutually beneficial relationship has to be the foundation of everything. And if it isn't in the present moment, well, that is exactly what you're going to be working on. So as Mercury goes backwards, symbolically to be understood, of course, not in physical reality, because in physical reality a planet can never go backwards. So the 1st of October is going to be one of those moments when this Mercury retrograde perfects again its square to Pluto retrograde. So that will mark what changes, terminations, what modifications you will have to work on. If there is any kind of inequality, unfairness, people taking advantage of you in any way, around the 1st of October, it will become very, very obvious in which way or who or which area of your life. So that might definitely be a moment when issues are gonna arise in your life. And at the same time, be very, very careful with scammers, with anything which has to do with deception, the contracts and agreements you sign, because Pluto can be seen as the shadow. And as I said, Mercury retrograde's lower expression is thieves and scammers, all of that. Then on the 4th of October, Mercury retrograde will perfect its trine to Jupiter retrograde. Well, this is where, regardless of what problems, what issues the need of urgency to change and rearrange your relationships or contracts or to make a choice and decision, there is going to be support for you out there in the form of, let's say, other people, your loved ones, a good advice, or simply your own optimism, your own desire to be authentic and have and fight for the future that you would like to experience. It can be seen as your faith. It can be seen as your willingness and ambition to do the work, believing in your inner truth. Meeting, getting connected to like-minded people. At the same time, it can also represent a moment of courage where you go and resolve certain relationships, certain broken connections from the past. This might be a moment when your exes resurface in your life. Communication is gonna be there. You're gonna have talks, discussions. Perhaps you will be presented with an apology, with a clarification, or it will be you who will be asked to clarify something. This can also represent that good fortune may arise from your past actions. People who you've shown kindness to may give that back to you at that moment, exactly when you will need it the most. The 6th of October is also going to be a very, very important day because we have a new moon in the sign of Libra, and not just any new moon, one which is in a very, very tight conjunction with Mars, and Mars is the planet of action, of course. Yes, it's not so strong in the sign of Libra, yet that might represent a sudden opportunity, a need to take action, to make choice. Maybe something is going to be presented to you like an offer, contract. For those of you who are looking for a job, for those of you who have their business and need new contacts, need new customers, new business, new allies, or everyone who works with the public or project-based work, this might be a moment when you will need to take a very empowered action. And if possible, don't make a very sudden action. If it is possible, allow this Mercury retrograde season, when basically, like it or not, you're still back to the drawing board and analyzing things, to inspire you to come up with the very, very best strategy and then make a decision, an action, a choice. But if it's like a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity, of course, take it. Just know that by the end of autumn, that might suffer changes and rearrangements. But if it's an opportunity, and just go and do something with it, Mars. It is your action, your choice, or you expressing your will that will ultimately guide you and lead you to some kind of new beginning, a new partnership or a new alliance, a new contract, a legal case which progresses, or Mars, the planet of action and war. If something happened to you and not so long ago in the recent past, you might go to court and fight for your justice, and there are a lot of chances for you to win because of Jupiter, planet of truth, and at the same time, a new moon might bring on a crisis, but with Mars in the picture, your actions to solve it are gonna lead to fruition later on the trine with Saturn. And why is this very important? Well, it's important because Mercury, even though it doesn't hold a very tight conjunction with the new moon, it is still present there. So its energy is definitely there. Maybe a new beginning might come from past actions, past choices, past decisions, which are gonna transform now into something new, unique, revolutionary. The 7th of October, so on the next day, is also very important because the Sun will perfect its conjunction with Mars. Both of these planets are very fiery in their nature, so they do inspire action, they do inspire communication, speaking, self-expression. And both of these planets are not very strong in the sign of Libra, but in this scenario, it's not really a bad thing, because that means less ego and more considering the greater good, considering equality, not just seeing your side of the story or the other person's side of the story, but seeing the middle path and the big picture at the same time. The 9th of October is also very important because that is the moment when Mercury retrograde conjuncts Mars and the Sun. They are also trined by Jupiter, and they are freshly entered into the part of the sky which astrologers call Via Combusta, the path of fire. So this might be a moment when you make some kind of choices, decisions, when you take action, when something is so very clear to you, when you are inspired to do something, Jupiter, you are given either the advice or something from the past. It can also be the recent past. Just makes sense. There is clarity in the air. And you are at the drawing board and now you have the formula. You know what to do. You know who to ask, who to contact. You know the deal that you want to make, or you know what to do with an offer. So this might be a moment. You might not have full clarity yet, but you are doing the work. You are getting there. It is a moment of great progress. It is a moment when you are truly negotiating or doing something very important, standing from a place of greater balance, or wanting to create this greater balance in your life. So that is a very, very strong empowerment in itself. And also, at this time, all these three planets are around 16 degrees of Libra, so the middle, exactly the middle path. It is also the Aquarian decan of the sign of Libra, the second decan. So that is when your actions can actually influence your longer term future. When your friends, acquaintances, family, even those people who are not necessarily part of your 7th house can come to your help. Or someone or a group of people belonging to the past returns to your life and helps you or inspires you one way or another. Or another expression of this energy, good fortune, good luck, some kind of completion, returns to you from the past and it gives you either resources or whatever it is that you need to take amplified action for the future. Now the 14th of October is also very important because at this moment Saturn is standing still in the sky preparing to go direct. So that means that symbolism is greatly amplified and it holds a trine, a celestial conversation of supreme harmony with Mercury. That is reality check, but the most favorable kind because you might know exactly what to do, or some of your negotiations, the moment when you were at the drawing board, well, that plan, that mental image, that modus operandi can take action. It can bring you results. There is also help all on the way. Maybe someone who is your mentor, who is superior, who is your boss, or maybe a highly skilled professional. So someone or something, if not anything else, basically karma, the universe, because Saturn is the great lord of karma, and whenever it holds a trine with a planet, it can mean that you harvest the fruits of your labor. It permits you to have your way, to your plan to be executed, Mercury. A choice or something that you did, a communication, bears fruits or gets you into position where you need to be a position of power. It can also mean dignity. It can also mean diligence paying off. On the 14th of October, Saturn is conjunct the moon as well. Moon is your feelings, your intuition, your emotional world. So you know what to do. Your emotions, your feelings are clear. You made a choice, at least emotionally. You know what you love, you know what you desire, you know what appeals to you. Also, at the same time, Jupiter is slowing down, almost standing still in the sky. And that kind of means that it is time for action, both on the world stage within society, Aquarius, but also in our personal lives. Then on the 17th of October, Mercury retrograde holds a beautiful sextile with Venus in Sagittarius. Venus is money, Venus is currency, Venus is our desires, everything that we love. Sagittarius is, for example, travels, long distance travels, international business, international communication. It is also our faith, our higher thinking. It can represent our aspirations. So something might come in your life internationally from a foreign country, foreign culture, foreign person, foreign love, a new partner, a new love, a new romantic relationship, or someone who can add value to your life, or maybe it is you who add value to someone else's life, but that will be very rewarding for you. Or it can simply mean that the work that you have done during this Mercury retrograde season leads you to a very hopeful place where you can actually have high aspirations. Everyone who is artistic, everyone who is sharing something with the world, well, this might be a really, really empowered period for them, so around the 17th of October. Then on the 18th of October, Mercury retrograde holds a trine with a direct moving Saturn. As I said, this might be the moment when a decision, a choice, contract, offer, or what you did at the drawing board crystallizes, it manifests, it takes shape and form, it blesses your life, fruits of your labor, it is working, it is empowered. You might be rewarded for making the right choices, you might be rewarded for, let's say, terminating certain relationship contracts, alliances, in the name of diligence, in the name of equality, in the name of your personal dignity. You know, sometimes this can play out where a person, an ally or a partner might sacrifice for us, and that is when we say, look, you are actually disadvantaging yourself, so please better take care of yourself than to waste your energy and time on me. Let me just do this on my own. And that might represent like really, really good karma. And whatever you decided to do on your own, for example, might be rewarded in the most prosperous or empowered ways possible. But this Saturn can also mean taking care of yourself, you being your own protector, you being your own teacher and your own parent, basically. So when other people wanted to take your power away through contracts, through agreements, through taking you for granted within a relationship, marriage, or whatever, if you stood up for yourself and not allowed them to have more power over you than is healthy, Saturn might reward you for being diligent, for being your own protector and standing up for what you believe in, your rights, your equality. This can also mean sacrifices that you have done for another person, for humanitarian purposes, Aquarius, the time, energy, effort that you invested into something or helping someone, a favor, or even maybe you had a karmic duty to do, to fulfill for someone, and you doing that, you actually sacrificing, returns back into your life in the most surprising and miraculous of ways. It can also represent like a Saturn and Mercury trine, patience, diligence, consideration of others, clear thinking, standing from a place of groundedness, and balance basically, not hyper optimistic, neither pessimistic, but just the right state of mind, if this makes sense, that might be greatly rewarded at this time. Also, Mars at this time is gonna be squaring Pluto, so you can imagine that means that some people, this will be the moment when some people implement the change. So changing career, changing jobs, changing contract, changing suppliers, changing banks, changing friends even. Going solo, not allowing other people to have power over you. Or the other way of looking at this, allowing those people who truly love you to have power over you, but that means putting your pride, your ego, your desire to be independent aside and accepting help, for example. Having friends in high places and making a compromise, accepting another path to getting where you want to be. Then around the 19th of the month, Mercury is already direct. And it will start making its way from 10 degrees of the sign of Libra back where it was when the retrograde started, so 25 degrees of Libra. What's more important is that a direct Mercury now holds the trine with the direct Saturn, so something takes effect, something completes, something is legally binding, you have an agreement, you have a deal, you have a decision, and you implement it, you live it, you basically do what is needed to be done. So this is a time of action because Saturn is direct, Jupiter is direct, Pluto is direct. So things will be moving fast forward, very fast forward, both individually and on the world stage as well. Then the 1st of November is when Mercury perfects its trine for the final time with Jupiter. Whatever you were hoping, that faith that you had, the aspiration, the future plan that you fought for during the Mercury retrograde season is gonna appear. You will see the results of your action. How did your decisions and choices bless your life? Also at this time, Mars has already entered into its home sign of Scorpio. And when Mars is in Scorpio, that is the energy of action, action which transforms your life, the change, living the change, executing the change, the treasure seeker's energy, where if you set a goal by now, the 1st of October, you're actually working with it. And the 2nd of November is when Mercury perfects the square it held with Pluto, but both these planets are direct at this time. So the change is there. How did this Mercury retrograde change your relationship, your contracts, your alliances, your choices, and everything that you basically love? Again, this aspect enforces June's Mercury retrograde season when it was in Gemini. How does the authenticity, the true self that you discovered reflect now in your relationship, in your life? But of course, on the world stage, this day may be extremely tensionate because this does mean that the Eris Mercury-Pluto T-square is once again active. So things will be quite serious. If there was any issues around equality, legislation, people versus centralized power in the sense of decisions and choices, well, at this time it's gonna be implemented. So, there is gonna be a lot of tension. No matter what happens, it will definitely not satisfy everyone. It's not gonna be agreed by everyone. It's not gonna be a fulfillment for everyone. Whenever there is a legally binding decision, especially regarding legislation, the law, and everything which has to do with fairness and equality, well, you can imagine that some people will be satisfied, it will please some people, and it will dissatisfy others. So, there is going to be fight, there is going to be conflict, and at the same time, this can also represent that international courts of justice are going to come up with a final rule, final decision. What is legal, what is constitutional, what is not constitutional. And also, as Saturn moved direct by this time, this is building up to December when the Saturn and Uranus square is going to be active once more, very, very active. There is eclipses, lunar eclipse in Taurus, solar eclipse in the sign of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is also the law. International travel, religion, etc. And the most amazing cosmological discoveries. So it's definitely solar eclipse, a big new chapter in all of these things. So it's not gonna be easy. But this is why this Mercury retrograde already prepared you for all of this. Making the right choices, decisions with patience, diligence, self-knowledge, a non-egocentric approach. So whatever takes place in the world at that time, so the end of autumn and the beginning of the winter and all through December, if you made the right choices and played your cards right, made your plans with great diligence and truly embodied your true authenticity, you are gonna be safe, you're gonna be found in a sense of your inner truth, what's true, what's not true, what's good and what's not. So you are going to be standing from a place of balance. So whatever goes on around you, it won't affect you as much. And also I would just like to go back to the 9th of October when there is going to be the Mercury, Sun and Mars conjunction, joined by Jupiter. Why is this important? Whenever Mercury conjuncts the Sun, that usually means one way or another an ability to anticipate, like a prophecy, like a really powerful foresight. Jupiter is in the sign of Aquarius at this time. Aquarius is all about calculating, setting the future. And Mars is ultimately action, our wills and desires. And why is this important? Because around that day, we will know what we can rely upon, what we can expect, and what we cannot. So that will be a very prophetic way, either from a very mental, rational perspective for some of us, as in our ability to anticipate the future in a very down-to-earth way, or it can also be from a mystical, intuitive, and quite instinctual way for others. So around that time, so the beginning of 9th of October, the sky, the divine, the karmic forces will prepare all of us what to expect and how to plan, how to prepare for the turbulent but at the same time life-changing future. So this concludes today's recording. I do hope that you enjoyed it, and I do hope that you find this date useful. Thank you so much for listening, and if you'd like to support my work, you can leave a donation on my PayPal. You can find it in the description of the video. With this being said, thank you again and wish everyone an easy and really inspired Mercury retrograde season. Until next time, bye for now.